Hello, and help me welcome Sandra Ziehm, who's running for the Board of Education in the next election coming up next month. And Sandra, why are you running again? You've been there for a while. You've been head of chair of it, and you want to go back and help them out this time now, I guess.
Well, I hope I will help. I hope it would be help. When you were saying that, I was thinking, old soldiers just never give up. They just keep trucking. I enjoyed, though, my time on the board. I can honestly, and children have always been near and dear to my heart. I have this theory about life, and that is that children, we don't choose where we're born. Mm-hmm. We grow where we're planted, but adults choose. They have choices, and so I don't have as much sympathy, but I have a lot of sympathy for kids and we have a lot of poverty in Nashua, much more, I think, than most people realize. And poverty brings a tremendous need, resources-wise. If you have a child who comes to school hungry and tired and emotionally drained, or if you have, like we have homeless children, so if you have a child who comes, they slept in a tent last night. So how did they get a shower? How did they do homework? Right. How did they? And those are issues that they're not always on the front burner, but for me, they're the main issue.
Well, does that always fall on the on the Board of Education, or what happens at the city? Where is the city's responsibility on these people?
I think we all, not just the city or the state, I think every American shares part of that. That's the only place where I truly disagree with the libertarians. I once had a libertarian, I said to him, I understand you don't believe in public education. Can you tell me why? And he said, well, why should I pay for your kid? And I said, I guess because he needs it. but I believe that we all have, if we were lucky enough to be born in this great country with all of the opportunities that we still have, I don't think we have as many as we did, but it's still a great country.
But the problems that you're talking about are really, while they affect education, they're not really part of education. There's a requirement, I think, for the city to take care of people that are having financial problems, no homes. They should have the responsibility for these people who are homeless.
We do give them extra money out of the budget, but everything always comes down to resources. And I was thinking, coming over here, public education is in a bite. You know, have one of those things that you clamp on and you make it tighter and tighter and tighter. Well, that's how education is being squeezed, in my view. It's being squeezed. You have the mandates, which demand the bulk of our money. And then you have those children who have strong parents, and they're always looking for advanced classes. So the advanced classes and the special education classes, and even poverty gets extra money out of the, not so much our budget, but out of the national budget. But the people in the middle, the people who don't fall at that top, and they don't fall, which is
a lot.
The bulk, huge bulk. Those kids pay the price. They end up in a class with 20, 22, 23, 24 kids, and when they give you the number of kids in a class, they're not counting the kids that come in and out. We have kids that may not spend the whole day in there, but they put them in there for music, or they put them in there for art, or they might put them in for math, whatever they choose to put them in there for. And so when they say 24, it may actually be 27. And so now you have 27 kids, you have one teacher, you have no paraprofessional, and you have 45% poverty. Again, the kids coming tired, hungry, weary, and that child cannot operate at the same level as a child who comes from home well-fed, feeling wonderful and ready to go.
I agree with all those things you're saying, but why does I believe the kids should be fed, they should be taken care of, but it shouldn't fall on the Board of Education. It should fall on the city, I think, for taking care of that. They take care of the people, the parents that don't go to school. They're being taken care of with...
They are in the midst, my understanding is that Nashua is in the midst of trying to raise money to have to open a new homeless shelter. But the reality is that we have insufficient for the need. The need is much greater than it's ever been, and it is ever expanding with the explosion of the drug scene.
Yeah, that's true.
It's bringing, and we have kids that are being born with learning disabilities, nothing they did. And so when you have, it should not, well, I shouldn't say it should not. Again, I think we all have to share the responsibility. But I think that the need is so great, it goes back to the old adage, can 50% of the people support 50%? And that's about where we are right now, ever going to the 60. And at least that's my perspective. And it doesn't mean my perspective is right, it just means that's how I see it, and that's how I will vote.
Well, let me ask you a question now. With all these current problems, I guess, in running it, we're supposed to be looking at the new strategic plan that they want to implement, and it's going to cost another, what I heard, anywhere from $3.5 to $5.5 million to implement. And I also see the fact that our test scores aren't going up; they're going down in sometimes. And how do we? I mean, education is the focus, and how do we focus on that?
You're only going to do what your resources allow you to do.
Right.
The most difficult part of being on the school board is when it comes to, I think it's I want to say it's like in January, but anyway, when that budget comes, it's not, probably March by the time you really get into it. But the point is that that's the hardest part of being on the school board, because we average about $1 million increase every year. It's insufficient. Special education increased every year I was on the board, $1 million. So what does that tell you about the $1 million increase we got?
Even though the number
special
of
education takes every bit of
students
it.
are going down,
but
though.
those are mandated. We
Yeah.
have no choice in that. The parent comes in, they have an individual education plan, and they can say, I want a one-on-one. What that means in reality is that if that child has one-on-one, those 25 in that classroom are going to have less and less and less, and that classroom will have to get bigger. And as far as the strategic plan, obviously, if they don't have the money, they'll either have to take it from somewhere else or they'll have to let it slide. Having said that, without a strategic plan, without goals, without a focus, without any motivation to what you think is important and needs to be done, then you're not going to get any of it done. So if you get any of it done and you make any improvement, it's better than no improvement. But in my view, it always goes to resources. Always. And I'm not saying that I don't think our special education kids need to be taken care of. Every child deserves an education. Every child.
Is there a way of making a better argument so people understand that they have to increase the money? Because it seems to me what you're saying is that you never really have a good presentation to justify the larger budget.
The unfortunate part is the other half of that bias is that the bias where you're caught in the middle is the taxpayer. And our taxpayers, I'm a taxpayer, so I can certainly empathize with taxpayers. You're a taxpayer, so I know you understand. You can only pay so much. At some point in time, there's no more money. You can't get blood out of a turnip, is that what they say? And so the taxpayer cannot afford to, and of course we have the tax cap in Nashua, and so Nashua the money part of it was so frustrating because as a taxpayer, I came in wanting to keep our taxes in line and keep it from becoming our taxes from being so much that people don't want to buy in Nashua. And that's what happens. You price yourself right out of the market.
Wow.
So,
They seem to be buying a lot of houses in Nashua now.
Yes, the market is, well, I'm glad to say, since I sell real estate, I'm glad to say, and my kids are very happy right now, so I can tell you and they're outbidding each other, it's so ridiculous.
And that's what they do in some of the other areas like Bedford or Hollis, or their budgets are sky high.
But they can afford.
They don't have the problems.
Well, first off, they don't have the poverty.
Right.
I don't see a lot of hungry children in Hollis or Windham or London, I don't begrudge anybody anything. I don't. But when you have the large cities always get the bulk of poverty, and the poverty brings with it a financial demand, in my view, because when you don't invest in education, you end up with kids who have guns shooting people on the street, in my view. So when people have no hope,
them.
when they
That's right.
see no way to make a better tomorrow, when they know they're destined to be caught in this trap where they never get up the hill, then so. And it's not all about that, but that is the hardest part.
Well, what is your focus going to be then? Is this going to, do we try to improve the education that the ones that are in there are getting, and say to the city, you take care of this part of it, which is feeding them and housing them?
You can say anything you want to anybody you want to. Don't mean they're going to do it.
Yeah.
They can only do what their resources. Right. And I'm sure the mayor is facing the same problem that we all face: is keeping it at a level where the residents can live with it, and yet doing an acceptable job that keeps our city from sinking into the muck and mire. But inevitably, your larger cities, like I know Manchester suffers from the same kind of predicament, and I have to think that Concord might be the third largest
Well,
city.
I think, you look at the large cities, and maybe they should get together and go to the state and see if the state can help out a little bit more. Well, and I understand the budget is giving education a lot more money this year.
If I had, one of the things that I considered in this election was, do I want to run for something different? Right. I've been 12 years on the board. Maybe I need to run for alderman or run for state rep or whatever it happens to be. And it was interesting because it would be a new challenge, and a new challenge as you get older, keeping the brain engaged is a good thing. But
You also live in the county, too. You were a county administrator.
Oh, I loved it. The county was the best. But having said that, in the end, I decided that experience, I believe that experience is the most valuable thing anybody can have. Education without
Definitely.
experience is only half of a book. And so, and I have 12 years. So the first 6 years, I just saturated. I actually told myself, don't open your mouth. Let them guess you don't know anything. If you open your mouth, they'll know it. So the first 6 years, I kept pretty silent, trying to learn so that I wouldn't make foolish mistakes. So it takes a long time to become valuable in the position. So I believe that there are 11 candidates, which I think is wonderful that there are that many people out there that are willing to put their name on the ballot. Having said that, though, I think I'm the only one, certainly one or two anyway, that have had any experience. And again, the experience is just invaluable. If for no other reason than parliamentary procedure, you have to know when to say, point of order. It's not your turn to speak. You need to be respectful and sit down and shut your mouth.
Right. Well, that's good.
I'm very, very refined, so everything I'm just blurted out. Let them have it full force. But
well,
anyway.
Do you think it should be run a little bit differently at the Board of Education, or what?
I personally have the greatest respect for Dr. Mosley. I know that others don't, and I respect their right to disagree. The reason I have such great respect for him, first off, he's an educator for life. Yeah. He was a teacher and came all the way from the bottom. See, I believe the most valuable employee is the employee who started right at the bottom and came all the way up. Because now they know, they can have empathy, and they know what each person should be doing if it were done at its maximum. And I believe he also has the heart. I believe he loves the kids. I sincerely believe that he wants what's best. And so to me, if his heart is right and he has the education, and he clearly does, then this was his first job as superintendent. And none of us are perfect, but I find that he, I have great respect for him. And so I'm looking forward, if I should be lucky enough to be elected, to working with him to make our schools, to try to get people, part of it is educating the public, part of it is making people aware of the circumstances that our schools, especially our big city schools, have gotten themselves into. And I would consider going to, in fact, I did go a couple of times and lobby for education. It's hard, though, keeping, as you well know, the system is not without flaws. We're people, and people make mistakes. But I think it's the best system in the world. In the world, unquestionably.
Let me ask you, in the last few minutes that we might have, do you see anything that should be run differently? And again, I get to the focus of it. It seems to me that the situation doesn't call for a whole new strategic plan. It needs to be a focus on the education and get your test scores up.
Well, the strategic plan, again, the strategic plan gives you goals, and I would disagree on one point, and it is a disagreement that I have with some of the other candidates. Because the special education group as a whole is ever increasing in big numbers, the 2,000 that we have currently, those are the ones that are identified. That doesn't mean that the others don't have similar problems and just haven't been identified. I would assure you there are such things. But they bring, if you are born with a processing problem, we have a young child that my daughter has guardianship of him. His mother was a drug. She did drugs. So he has a processing problem. He actually he doesn't know how to play with the other kids. It's social skills. And I think this is one of the things that I heard them talking about on the board that some people felt there was no place for in education, and you certainly have a right to agree with that. I think that different opinions coming together and discussing it, that's the healthiest thing you can do, because you don't solve a problem unless you analyze it and figure out what's the best way to tackle this. So that you're even bringing it up tells me that you pay attention and that you're a good citizen. Because I think good citizens have to contribute.
Right.
We have to give back. You can't take and expect our country to continue to be strong. So we need people who participate and who care enough to make sacrifices, to sometimes do what's best for others.
Yeah, the object of these shows is to get education out and have people talk about ideas and see whether they can get together to solve the problem, because the problem is big. And I sympathize with that. It's a matter of how are you attacking the problem? What can you do to do your best for the kids? At least the most of the kids.
In my view, you have to keep the classroom small.
Yeah.
When you have 23 kids in a classroom, and you have no paraprofessionals, and in that 23, 24, you have 45% poverty, you have, there might be one autistic, and there might be two with ADHD, and there might be one who is allergic to bees and has medical allergies that have to be watched on a continuous basis. I mean, those things for one teacher to address all of the needs of 23 kids when they have so many, the multiplicity of what she's called on to do in a given day.
It's
Superman,
overwhelming.
Batman, Superwoman, any of those heroes couldn't combat it, I'm telling you. And I have to tell you, I have great respect for our teachers. I could tell you sacrifices that our teachers have made because of their great love for their students. I remember hearing a story where one of our teachers had won the lottery, and she took her lottery money and gave it to one of the parents so that they could go and rent a house because they were living on the street. So those are the kind of stories that touch your heart and say to you that our community is basically good. There are still good people. We don't hear enough about those good people.
Have you heard of any other in the state or other states that there's a lot of cities that have these problems? Are they handling it any differently than we're handling it here?
Well, Manchester is the one in New Hampshire that Manchester actually has more poverty than we do.
Yeah.
And so they have a more severe problem. They tried to institute a tax cap. I don't know if it passed or not. Maybe you know. Did it pass? Because I know they were talking about it for a while there. I don't know whatever came of it. But I know that they have more severe problems than we have. And so, I think they face the same challenges. And in the end, you can do everything you know how to do. But if you don't have resources, you don't have them.
I understand that part of the problem. And maybe the solution is partly in educating the taxpayers in the situation and understanding what you can do to ameliorate it in one way or another. And maybe it's a selling job from that point. I mean, I don't want to have taxes raised, but I want to make sure that the money's being used properly. And I was just wondering if somebody one of the things we looked at when I was in the legislature is how other states are handling some of the problems they have. Sometimes you come up with some good ideas, and does the
One of the
board-
major differences is I come from Virginia. In Virginia, they do not have a union. Their average, I have a niece who is a principal at an elementary school. When I go down south, we spent the whole time comparing
yeah.
her to us because without the union, it's totally different. Their average salary is $40,000. Our beginning salary is like it used to be, I think, like 42. So, and our average teacher, the tenured teacher, is in the 60s, 65 to 70. So I would suggest to you that in and of itself makes a huge
So you're
difference.
more flexible without the unions, you'd be? Is that what you're saying?
As far as salary, well, you have to
Well-
understand that the biggest part of our budget goes to pay salaries,
That's right.
unquestionably. So if you cannot keep those salaries, if those salaries continue to spiral upward, which they're going to, because the problem is then we have to compete with the other schools.
Yeah.
So for instance, in Nashua, our middle school teacher is below what Amherst, Windham,
Right, right.
Londonderry, Hollis, any of your yuppie towns,
Right.
which that's who we compete with because we're completely surrounded by them. Those towns are paying more. We had one teacher who left Nashua and they got something like a $16,000 raise. So we train them and then they go where they can make more money. You can't blame them for that.
No.
I mean, if I'm in the job market, I'm going to try to make as much as I can because my family depends on my doing that. So we're caught in this horrific conflict. It's a conflict, no question about it. And I would suggest to you, in my view, and it is only my view, but in my view, it is our average student who pays the price for
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
It is our average student who pays the price. And that's why, at the end of the year, when we graduate a class, 43, 44% of them go out of our school not reading on grade level. These are all my opinions, folks. I don't represent my personal opinion publicly stated. So it doesn't, a lot of people disagree with me, and I could be wrong, but my thing is that we need to try to spread it more evenly than we do. Having said that, how do you refuse to do a mandate from the federal government? How do you say I will not give them that one-on-one? Because then they're going to sue us, and it's going to cost even more.
Well, no, but you do what you can with the money they have, and if they don't give you more money, you can't do.
I believe we do, under the circumstances that we have. Again, these salaries were where they are pretty much when I came on board. And so, and we have to compete. We are competing with Hollis, and
Yeah, I understand
and
that
if
part of it, but
we keep losing our good teachers, that means that our kids are going to get even less. Is an experienced teacher better than an inexperienced teacher? I think so. And so, when we lose an experienced teacher and get an inexperienced teacher, that child in the middle pays dearly, from my perspective. And so, and I believe, again, going back to this thing, is public education. I believe, my whole time on the board, the one theme that I heard constantly, education is the stairwell to success.
Yeah, I understand
And
that
you
very much
believe it.
so.
I know you do, Carl.
very much
And
so.
I believe it. And so to try to give these kids the best education we can get them, that's my heart's desire. If I could walk on water, I would do it.
well, don't print money on it. Sandra, we've run over time, but thank you for everything. And if you're elected, I'd like to have you on and hear what you're doing.
Okay, well, I'd be
Okay,
happy
I
to
see.
come back anytime. Always a
Okay.
pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. God bless.